No. It's not the commands. It's not the speed. It's not the interfaces. It's the modes. By the time we're done here, we will navigate the configuration modes of a Cisco device. What made Cisco famous? That's a question up for much debate, but I would say they found a way to take a command line interface, which command line interfaces weren't a new thing when Cisco created theirs, but they took a command line interface and made it friendly. The way they did it is through the concept of modes. So we're going to be spending most of our time in the live interface. That's why I entitled this is just a summary of the modes. So you can see kind of moving in and out of these modes, but I want you to think about these modes as doors. Doors of configuration, to where when you walk through a door, you have a whole new room of options. I mean, it's almost like imagine, actually, I'm just thinking of this right now. One of my favorite trips of all time was actually an accident. Back when my wife and I were dating, we flew to San Francisco and drove to a concert probably 100 miles away, and we never made it there because as we were driving, I said, look, the Jelly Belly factory. And why not? Let's stop there. So we stopped at the Jelly Belly factory, and I had one of the most amazing tours of all times where literally I'm going through the Jelly Belly factory. They're showing me how all the different Jelly Belly jelly beans are made. And by the way, I bought like a 20-pound bag of these things called belly flops, which is all the ones that didn't make it into the jelly bean because they were kind of like mutant looking. But they were delicious, and now I can never eat a Jelly Belly again. But anyway, where am I going? So we were at the Jelly Belly factory, and literally every room we would walk in, it'd be like, here's the blue ones, and it'd be like the blue room and all these different blue jelly beans, and here's the green ones, and they did these different rooms based on different themes of Jelly Belly. And that's kind of how I want you to think of these rooms of configuration. Every room that you walk into is like a new color, a new shade, a new spectrum of commands that you can type. The commands that you'll find in room 1, which is the user mode, that's where it all begins, are not the same as what you'll find in exec mode or global or interface. Some of them might overlap a little bit. There might be some command that works in both, especially between user and privilege modes. For example, you can ping a device from there, and that command works here and here. It doesn't work here or here or here because it's not part of those rooms. The iOS modes are like the Matrix. I can explain it to you, but you really have to experience it for yourself. Let's go. My connection to the router timed out, so I'm going to hit enter and get back in. I'm sitting at the router, and this little right arrow bracket says a lot. That says user mode, and I'm going to hit the question mark. We covered the question mark command in the previous video where I was talking about how we can get help and navigate through. But this gives me a list of commands that I can perform from user mode. That's a lot. I would say if I was pushing the space bar, that's like 2 and maybe a quarter pages of commands, at least at this resolution, that I was able to see that I can do from user mode. Now watch this. I'm going to type in enable, which moves me into privilege mode. Now I'll hit the question mark and I'll see 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like, how far will it go? 4.5 pages of command. So just by moving from user mode to privilege mode, I just, by the way, exited back out, and now I'm back in user mode. I gained 2 full pages of commands that I'm able to perform. So let's hit the chalkboard real quick because I want to give you the hierarchy of the commands that you're going to see. User mode is where it all begins. This mode is very limited and primarily used for basic viewing. That's show commands, by the way, and testing, things like ping or telnet. But just think of this primarily as your landing pad for basic access. You'll then move to privilege mode, and that's always the first mode. That's where the prompt changes to a pound symbol or a hashtag. See, Cisco was way ahead of their times. Before social media was, they're like, hashtag, we are Cisco. And once you're into privilege mode, you have full access. That is, you can view anything, you can do anything, you can configure anything, but you can't perform that configuration from here. You need to move first into global configuration mode. And you do that by typing in configure terminal. And you saw in the previous video where I was talking about abbreviations like conf t, that'll move you right into that. You can use whatever short version of that you want. But moving into global configuration now allows you to configure, just like the name implies, the global option of your device and launch into any of the other modes that exist on your Cisco device. Meaning, you want to configure the interface? Well, that's fine. Go ahead and jump into interface configuration mode. You want to configure the telnet ports and SSH capability? Move into line configuration mode. You want to configure a routing protocol? Move into router configuration mode. You want to configure quality of service? Well, go ahead and jump into class map or policy map configuration mode. Truth be told, there are hundreds of modes, hundreds of rooms of jelly beans that you can walk into and configure all the different elements. And this is why it made Cisco famous. Just think about it. There's so much configuration on your router and so many things that you can configure. Can't we compartmentalize it? Can't we just say, okay, the interface is over there, the routing protocol is over there, okay, telnet, yeah, that's right there. They're all in their own little containers, which makes it so much less confusing. Now, when you first get started, you might be like, I know the command, I don't remember what mode to be in. That's perfectly normal, trust me. It takes a little while to get used to doing the different modes, but once you do, it's just like second nature. One other thing I just feel the proclivity to type in here is enable. This is the command that moves you from user to privilege mode. And by the way, we can also move back to user mode. You saw that I typed in exit, which pretty much killed my session on the router. And that's one way of doing it. You could also type in disable, and that'll move you back too. But this is the last piece of the chalkboard conversation. I wanted to discuss that ability to move in and out of the various commands. First off, it has to go in this order. Meaning, you start in user mode, you move to privilege mode, then to global config mode, and then to whatever sub mode you want to. There's no shortcut to get through that door. Early on, you'll probably find yourself typing configure terminal right there. It won't work. You might try to enter interface configuration mode from there. It won't work. You have to go into global config, then jump down. But moving back is rather simple. You can move all the way back, meaning all the way back to, I'll put the line right there, to privilege mode by typing in either end or use the ultimate get out command, Control Z. Of all the movies that I've ever seen, that one sticks in my head the most. There's a scene in the movie Get Out that there's this guy with a straw hat, gets flashed with a camera, and he freezes for a minute, and then he looks at the guy and goes, "Get out." And he starts freaking out. So that's what I want you to do. When you think of Control Z, think of that guy. If you've seen that movie, if you don't, because it'll stick in your head forever. That guy should win an Emmy Award. Anyway, his straw hat is plastered in my mind forever. So anyway, Control Z bails you out no matter what. Scream it, get out. You could be in class map. You could be in global config. You could be typing a command and be almost all the way through. And if you hit Control Z, you're out. It drops you all the way back to privilege mode no matter what. That's why I love it. It's just one of those like done. It also tells you why when we talked about the navigation, Control A and Control E move you to the end, at the beginning and end of a line, right? It's because Control Z was reserved for that brilliant bailout command. So if you have a blank prompt, like you're sitting here and you haven't typed anything, sure, type in end, that's fine, but it's going to be faster to do Control Z. Exit moves you back one level at a time. If I'm in interface, it'll drop you to global config. If I'm in global config, it'll drop you to privilege. Here in privilege mode, it will actually exit you out of the router, which technically drops you back to user mode. So let's bring it back to the router. I'll hit enter, get to user mode, type in enable. Boom, I'm in privilege mode. Now, normally you will have a password that keeps you from just jumping there if you're just anybody, because obviously now you can do anything you want to the router. Configure terminal. That'll now move you into the global configuration mode. And let me give you an example. I'm going to type in interface gigabit Ethernet 0/0. Enter. Notice, because you've been seeing these prompts all along. Now you just have a name for them. Right caret user mode, pound symbol or hashtag privilege mode. Config hashtag is global config. And now after that is any level of configuration that you want to go in. Right now I'm in interface configuration mode. And all the commands that I can type in here deal with the interface. You want to put a description on that interface, you can do that. You want to assign a channel group to that interface, you can do that. So all those things. Oh, by the way, if you want to stop the flow of the more, just hit Q on the keyboard or any other key except space or enter key. Right, so if I want to drop back, I exit out. Let me just show you one other mode. I'll go into, well, I don't want to go class map. So let's go line configuration. I'll do line VTY 0 and hit enter. I'm now in the configuration mode for the first telnet port on this device, or for the first telnet session that can actually handle remote configuration sessions. All the commands that I type from here affect just that line. Now remind me again, what do I do if I want to just get out all the way back to privilege mode? Get out! Simply press Control Z on the keyboard and bam, we're all the way back at the privilege mode. Go into global config, let's do interface G0/0. I know I'm using shortcuts now, which is fine. Same command as this. Typing in exit bails me out one command, or one level I should say, at a time. Go back in, interface G0/0. Last one, end, drops me all the way back just like Control Z does. It's just not as dramatic as hitting Control Z and screaming, get out, every single time. You should do that. Let's start a revolution. It'd be great. I see thousands of Cisco certified engineers screaming, get out, at businesses around the world. You've now seen the navigation of the configuration modes of a Cisco device. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.